right, now I'll
So welcome everyone to Not Just This, and the second Monday of the month. It's a non-duality and integration Zoom meeting with Walter Driscoll and me, Don Garland. So a few things for your information. Please keep your microphones muted until you're invited to speak. And just to be cognizant that this is being shared live on YouTube. So when you're asking your questions, you're giving your consent to be recorded and to be on YouTube. And so just raise your hand virtually after the brief introduction by unmuting yourself and turning on your camera. Alternatively, you can just write your questions in the Zoom chat or on YouTube chat, and your name won't be read out, so you can retain your anonymity. And please put it in question form and keep it to the point. And just a reminder, this is for entertainment purposes only. And that's about it. So begin with a short introduction to non-duality. So non-duality is the end of identification with the self. The personal exists, but it is no longer who I am, and the question of identity is not resolved. There is no big self, there is nothing to be recognized in that sense. It's just a dropping away of the me. And this seems to create a lot of change of how things are perceived, experienced. They're no longer experienced by someone, they're experienced by no one. So life becomes more vivid and you come into rest where you are, which is very pleasant. It's the end of the historical self. So there is a new relationship with the history of the self, which, because you're not deriving your identity from that, you're freed up from that. And so there's a kind of self-compassion that goes on as well with that and with others. So the sense of someone being in here and the world being outside collapses, as does time. So you realize that you're not the time-bound self, although time can be accessed and we live in time at the same time. So it is something that is accessed, but less frequently. So there's a lot more just being present where you are. And that is enough for now, I think. I'll hand over to Walter, maybe.
All right, thank you, Don. So non-duality here was seemed like the falling away of seeing the world as a separate self, a separate autonomous individual. And when that falling away was seen by no one, it was also seen there is no separate existence at all. This wasn't a personal experience. It was just seeing that the walls and the floors and all the bodies, all the apparent objects were just this one no thing appearing as many things. And it's clear there's no one in the body doing anything. And life seems to be being done. not to me, not by me, not through me, but just happening. And there's this undercurrent of love, peace, and equanimity that no matter what's happening seems to be there. And this flow of life just keeps flowing. And I think it's amazing that there's no source. There's just this arising of what appears in immediacy. And it's so freeing because nothing's required. I don't have to do anything for that to be what it already is. There's no special technique to bring about what already has been. It's already always fully realized, fully what it is. Life being itself. Being perfect. So that's enough from me. We got a lot of people here. So if you'd like to ask a question, you can raise your hand virtually and I will call on you. And Don and I will be happy to take your questions, or you can type it in the chat, either on YouTube or in the Zoom chat, and I'll just read the question without saying your name so you can maintain your anonymity. So with that, we'll open it up for questions. Lucio raised his hand. Jump in, Lucio.
Hey, can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Hi.
Hey, good morning, guys. It's my morning. I don't know where you guys are at, but it's my morning. So
Evening.
Afternoon here.
So my question is, and I kind of brought this up maybe a couple of weeks ago when I was in a meeting. I asked if non-duality can be dangerous. And this question is, I guess, kind of more for Dawn, since I think she kind of deals with, or she works with people in this kind of realm or whatever. Is it, because you both mentioned something falling away in your introduction, that both kind of that kind of came up, and but you also hear people talking about how it's not that anything falls away, it's just that it's seen, or I don't know, there seems to be a lot of double speak around that sort of thing. I say double speak. I know, I don't think they're intentionally deceiving anybody, but the language does kind of get a little bit paradoxical. And I was just wondering, like, is saying something like that dangerous, or is it creating like more seeking in people who are like, I want that, or that's the target, or does it create like desires? Like, I don't know. It just seems that like that talking about that is does Dawn, do you get like people who are like trying to achieve that, or who think they've achieved that, or do you think that that's one of the main things that makes people kind of think that this could be a dangerous message? I don't know if that question makes sense. Let me know if that makes sense, but yeah, that's my question.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, the message itself isn't dangerous. But it's often taken in a way that kind of you know, the way people end up kind of stuck on the message and thinking that the psychological self or the rest of it doesn't matter. I mean, that's, you've only got this life. Like, okay, so there's no boundary, whatever, but it's still, you're still living a life. Okay, nobody's doing that, but people get hung up on the message, and very often I think they leave everything else because it doesn't seem important. They think this is going to change everything, and it doesn't necessarily do that. And also the sort of idea of this is just the story. In one sense, that's true. In another sense, it isn't. It's the only story you fucking have. Like, it's a really important story, and you will give a damn about it. Like, when things go wrong, like, you don't want them to go wrong. And also afterwards, I think some of the conditioning of what you've read or what you've listened to can cling as well. So there's this kind of, you have to kind of exercise everything that's been said and really find out for yourself what the hell is going on. So I think you can free yourself from that as well. There definitely is a date. I think people become more like cynical about their personal history and their childhood, and a bit more like they're almost embarrassed to take that seriously, because, like, you know, what does it matter? It's not ultimately real. Or, but I mean, it's the only reality we know. So in that sense, it can be. But I think the message itself is innocent, and I'm certainly not against anyone speaking how they speak. I mean, for some people, there's a real freedom in just saying, right, well, this is it. And, you know, you come across different speakers, and maybe at the right time can kind of, you know, realize that actually actualizing your potential and doing stuff you really want to do in life is just awesome. And that's what it's all about for me. It's like, it's about entering into life and as fully as you can, and following your goals and aspirations. I mean, for me, that doesn't stop. It may have, you know, there's a cessation of that for a while, isn't, because it's such a shock when you can just sit on your horse and really enjoy that. But I mean, you don't want to do that for 30 years, maybe a couple of years, but there is something about coming back in and just really getting into it. And, you know, and because it will have healed some wounds, it won't have healed all of them, but it will certainly have, you know, your heart's open. So things are possible that maybe weren't possible before, which is beautiful. I don't know if that answers your question, but I mean,
Yeah, it sort of answers my question. I kind of got lost in what you were saying. I was going to follow up, but then I just lost it. But I think for me, like, the hearing stuff like that in a way was like, because I had kind of gotten glimpses when I was younger, like, in a way it was kind of validating that, because I never talked about it, and it was very like intense, and some of the falling away or whatever you want to call it, like it kind of seemed to happen, but I didn't really have any context for it. So I don't know, I just thought there was just something wrong with me, and so in a way it was validating, but at the same time, like, it does seem to create this like dangling carrot where it's like, look, all of the heaviness of life can be released, you know, apparently. And so it's like, and then you start hearing about other people's experiences, and then you're like, I wonder if I still got more to go. I wonder if I fully released the thing or whatever, you know. And so it just, I feel like it does create, or it can really lend itself to that sort of seeking situation where people want to have that, and even if they don't have that, they might try to trick themselves into getting it, like fake it till you make it, like pretend you don't, you know, pretend nothing affects you, you know, or use it for bypassing. So it just seems like saying stuff like that could be a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to say wrong, but just like in a way kind of like dangerous in a way. I don't necessarily disagree with it from my experience, but I also did have a sense for a few months there where like, I really thought that there was more to do and that I could do something about it. And that, I don't know, it kind of got into like a sort of like a roller coaster, emotional roller coaster where I was just trying to understand it more and wanting to get there. But, I mean, I don't have that right now, but when I do sometimes see other people in these meetings, like there does seem to be quite a bit of that. So.
And also caught in parroting what everybody else is saying, like they're caught in this almost like they're almost like enslaved to it, like this, and you know, and they can't speak freely, and you know, and it's like they're in this kind of verbal kind of straitjacket as well, like so they can't speak from their natural experience. The psychological isn't the psychological, it has to be spoken about in a sort of non-dual way, and it's like really annoying. And so yeah, I think this is all about freedom, and yet what comes with it sometimes is this terrible constriction and expression, and you know, and for me, yes, you look around for validation from all these speakers, and then you wake up, you got to get rid of all, you got to kill them all, man. That really is killing the Buddha on the road. Like, yeah, you can get really stuck. There's an imitation of this, and I think after waking, there's also an imitation that can go on from speakers imitating each other. Like, okay, there is one message that can be reduced and be quite simple and straightforward, but I think we're you know, there's still like that conformity. There's a pressure to conform as a speaker to, you know, what is the kind of thing to say. Like, it's finding your freedom with this is just an ongoing thing, you know. It really is. What do you really think? I mean, that is a powerful, it's a very difficult thing to find out as well. Like, what do you really think? You know, how do you really experience this? Because, you know, and it changes over time, how you see it, how you express it, like, you know. But
Yeah. Thank you for your response. I'm gonna put my hand down and I'll jump back in if I have more questions.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll just add my 2 cents to that. Regarding the double speak, you know, when it's seen that there was no one here, it's seen that there was never anyone here. So it's a weird thing to talk about, because there does seem to be a falling away, but the falling away is of something that never was. It was just like an illusion, you know, like a magician is doing a trick. So you see, oh, that never was real. That was always just like a trick. So it's not really double speak, because nothing does really fall away. Just like the magician's not really making something disappear. Anyway, we have a few other hands up. Let's go with Myra. Myra. M-Y-R-A. Myra. All right, let's go with Robbie.
Oh, hi there. Yeah, I just joined this group because I thought it seemed quite interesting. I'm open to quite a lot of theories and learning from them, but I know very little of non-duality, and I'd like to non-duality, and I'd just like to learn a bit about it. I have my own spiritual experiences in my life, so I might learn that my experiences fall in line with this system of thought. So yeah, that's it really.
Would you like to share some of your, well, like what kind of spiritual experiences are you having then?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, I've had things like seeing, like going traveling, beginning a year of traveling by meeting somebody randomly and becoming very good friends with them.
Okay.
And then going all around, traveling all around Southeast Asia, Australia, Southeast Asia again. And I met this person in Sydney in Australia. And then I traveled for a year solo. And I was thinking a lot about the same person right at the end of my travels. And just as I was thinking of them, I looked down the street, busy street, and he was there.
Well, a lot of synchronicity stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool. So that got you into the search then? So you're kind of curious now, and you're starting to watch YouTube videos and.
Yeah, I just love conversation, to be honest. So it's like, so I pick up best from people rather than learning through YouTube and stuff like that. But I was wondering, could you give us a little breakdown of what non-duality is?
Well, it was at the intro, John.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
You'll probably pick it up. It's just the falling away of the personal self, like, so your identity with this human being, you know, there's no division anymore. So it's just this boundless love that, you know, so it's, you know, it's kind of that. But there's loads of stuff out there. Type in non-duality, man. There's loads of stuff.
Oh, I'll do that in a bit. Yeah, thank you.
Nice speaking to you.
Cheers, Dawn.
I think Myra was going to try again.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Okay,
Hear you
awesome.
now.
Thanks. Okay, nice to meet all you guys. This has been interesting so far. Okay, so I have two questions and they're kind of interrelated. So, like in a lot of meditation circles, you hear a lot of talk about being lost in thought, and it's kind of spoken about in this negative way. And, you know, they speak a lot about how a lot of thoughts are kind of like junk and they're nonsense and they don't serve you and you can just ignore them and that kind of thing. And so it's easy to get the impression that the prevailing idea is that thoughts are wrong, or it's something we should try to overcome, or just keep ignoring, which is confusing to me because thoughts can be useful as well. Like if you're planning something, like for you guys to plan this meeting, you kind of had to engage in thoughts. But even just doing creative work, I have to have a lot of bad ideas, or I have to keep like engaging with my mind's thoughts to just kind of keep that creative inspiration going. So the question with that is, what do you think of that whole idea of like avoiding being lost in thought, or how do you see navigating creativity with also recognizing non-duality and like going through all those thoughts, those creative thoughts? And secondly, so that's creativity and getting lost in thought. And secondly, how do you just, because like Dawn, you were saying, you know, you still live a normal life, you still have your goals. So how do you invoke non-duality, and how do you still remember that, but still live your normal life where you're getting caught up in this task and that task? But how do you still keep non-duality there in your life?
Do you want to go, Walter, or?
Well, just that last part was to you. So why don't you take it and then.
Okay, the last part. So the last part was, I mean, you don't keep it. I mean, it's not like it's irrelevant to that. It's just so in normal life, it's experienced slightly differently, as in only the fact that there's no one here. It's a very different visceral experience, and so there's a kind of lack of self-consciousness that's kind of there, which isn't to say that self-consciousness in a more ordinary sense can't arise, but it can. So there's just the sense of intimacy, I suppose, is that there's nothing that changes in experience other than that, really. So life is still met in the same way. There's just more presence, so there's more ability to be present with your experience. It doesn't, so it's you know, more of a sense of ease maybe, and a sort of sense of flow. Less censorship perhaps, but it just feels more natural maybe. And but aside from that, it's just normal life. But there's energetically and viscerally is experienced differently, but it doesn't interfere with anything else you do, if you know what I mean. And if anything, it makes you more present to that, and maybe more like you, because you're a creative person, so you're obviously in the flow when you do what you do. I don't know what you do, but so it's kind of like that. However you are with whatever it is you do, it's kind of like that, but it's not conditional or you know, doesn't depend on anything. So it's just there all the time, and you kind of forget about it and go on about your business most of the time. You want to say something?
Yes, just about the creativity. This is pure creativity, like happening every second. So I can't see anything getting in the way of it or inhibiting it. It's just all there is this pure creativity. So just your question, it's hard to answer because I just don't see anything as an obstruction to what already is. Because it's already whatever's happening. So meditating, not meditating, being productive, not being productive. There's no suggestion here anyway that you need to be creative and accomplish things. And it's just seeing that whatever is happening is this pure creativity.
Oh,
There's no way out of it.
oh, can I comment on the thought aspect of it? I mean, you know, emotions are information. Well, thought is information too, and we need that to navigate life. And you know, if you're not seeing reality clearly, that your thinking may be distorted just the same way as you're misinterpreting emotions. But and also after this, thinking tends to be more creative, but you know, everybody has more or less access to it. So it's not about thinking, and there's nothing wrong with thinking. Thinking's good. I enjoy thinking. You know, when the mind is there, the mind is there. When it's gone, it's gone. They're different experiences, and there's certainly more presence when the mind isn't there. But so all this kind of controlling thought stuff, I'm not really into that. I mean, it can be, if you're into some sort of mantra meditation or something, it could be quite, you know, I wouldn't live my life like that, and I wouldn't want to suppress that either, because thought is, you know, it can be a real gift. I know ruminative thoughts pain in the ass, like, but yeah, and awakening's nothing to do with that. It tends to be slowed down. So controlling thought, you know, it's fine if you're doing that in a meditation, but it's not about that. It's just, you know, that's it.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting because what both of you have said, it kind of, I guess it speaks to this idea of just accepting everything and seeing that what arises is just what's here now. Whereas I think what my trouble is maybe is that I'm trying to get into a certain kind of state. Maybe when I'm trying to remind myself of like non-duality, I'm like, it's like I'm trying to force something to appear, and like I force a feeling, or like right now I'm being a meditator, and maybe kind of seeing that as separate from like my regular life. But like what you guys are saying is like that can always be the case, like throughout your day, whatever you're doing, you're just kind of recognizing what's there, and it's not really about forcing any kind of state. Is that about right?
Sounds right. What's your creative work, by the way? What do you do?
So I do writing in marketing, so like coming up with campaigns and that kind of thing.
Okay, all right. And you feel like this gets in the way of it, or the meditation, or not then? Or
It's just I'll have a lot of, the meditation does help actually. Like you said, it sparks some creativity. I think what it is that I'll just have a lot of thoughts happening, and then some of these creative thoughts, like they'll combine different ideas, and some of them will just be distracting me as I'm like going about my tasks. So
Okay.
sometimes I just get a bit confused, like, oh, is that something that I should be working on, trying not to do? Or
Right.
is that just how the creativity process is? Like, it's just going to be there and the inspiration strikes, and then you have to explore these different ideas. And that's fine to do. I mean, that's kind of my work.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. Explore them. Sounds good.
Sorry, guys. Turn that off. There we go.
Were there any other questions in the Zoom before I go to YouTube? All right. I got one about reincarnation. Can you speak about reincarnation from a non-duality perspective? People say they can remember past lives. Dawn, you want to speak about reincarnation?
Reincarnation. Well, for a start, I don't know whether reincarnation is the case or not. It possibly is. Yeah, I mean, but again, this is, you know, it's not quite non-duality in a sense, but yeah, I mean, the idea of bodily death happens, but I think the psychological self continues, soul psyche, as Tim Freak would put it. I mean, from my own experiences of that. So yes, it could well exist, but whether it's, you know, yeah, I mean, my guess is, but I cannot know that. I cannot know that with any certainty. I do not have experience of remembering past lives. I've had other experience of other dimensions. So it does make me think that something like that is possibly the case. But that's as best I can put it. So yeah, yeah, I imagine it does happen, but that's, yeah, I can't answer beyond that.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about reincarnation. You know, what gets reincarnated? What is it? You know, what is it that's here now that had a past life, that can have a next life, that can be reincarnated, that rises out of the body? Or what is that thing? You know, that I have more questions than answers about the soul or this eternal beingness, presence, isness, life force, or something.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting one. Like I get very peculiar moments sometimes where, like, if I think about my dad and I look in the mirror, I see my dad because I look so similar.
Yeah.
And then it's like afterwards, things will happen in a day that just don't really, that I can't explain. The things to do with him, like he always had great luck at finding things that he needed when he was out cycling at night.
Mm.
And often whenever I think about him and then go off afterwards for a walk or a cycle, I'll just find something that's special, that something that I've been looking for. Yeah, that means something to me. But and I mean, that being said, I also believe there is something to do with spirits passing down. I don't know if it's through generations or what, but I believe in that. I've had instances where, one instance where I was kind of in a meditative state, working all day, and my body was at complete, almost exhaustion, and I found myself sort of, as I was going up, I was semi-delirious in the heat because it was so hot. And I said Iska, and I thought I didn't know what that meant to me, and I didn't know what it meant at the time, but I knew it meant something. And then later on, when I Googled Iska, it's Gaelic for water. So that definitely, and I don't know anybody who's Gaelic. I've got family that are Scottish, but I've never ever heard that word in my life before. So that came out of me. So I definitely think there's. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Aline. Thank you. Yes, Irish word for water. There we go. And I got a grandmother who's Irish. So, and I was working with some Irish people there as well. They're all speaking English, but yeah. So there you go. There's something.
Something. Yeah. No, I think as well, like if you've experienced, you had out of body experiences or other dimensions, it seems very clear that experience doesn't depend on a body. And in a sense, there's no body here, there is and there isn't. But the personality seems to exist beyond that in my experience. But before
I think and I think us as children, a lot of us are much more aware of that.
Yeah. We're tuned in.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you'll find like that's kind of like a state that I kind of miss in a way, because I know when I walked to school, I used to have kind of semi like adventures really just on the way to school, and I wouldn't be talking with anybody necessarily, but I would just find everything so eye-opening. And sometimes experiences, well, I know this experience, I've heard this before, I've been here before.
Okay. Familiar.
Yeah, it's a lovely state to be in, and it's kind of like I'd love to learn how to reconnect to that state of being again, because
well,
I was
not Joe, but that original, that's what you're describing there, isn't it? So just the spontaneity and
yeah.
childhood. Maybe it's stayed with you a little bit longer than it does with some. Who knows?
Yeah, I think for some whatever reason, life has kept certain things around me. I think it's I've always needed a guide in my life. I've always needed a guiding thing, and for some reason that's been a part of my life. So who knows? I might well tap into something, into my calling.
Yeah,
Regard,
hopefully.
fingers crossed. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. I think Lucio has his hand up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on Myra, what she said. She said about thoughts, how sometimes they're kind of looked upon as not a good thing. Sometimes, or like the no mind thing. I don't think there's a one size fits all answer to that. Really, I think it comes down to the person's experience, because some people got really bad neurotic shit going on, and they're fully identified with it, and it's just constant. And from my experience with that, if there's a chance to like step into a state of no mind, or where thoughts reduce so much, like just having that, like for me at least, it was like it really facilitated like not identifying with the thoughts later. It really helped like to disidentify from them, and not be like completely overtaken by them. But I mean, if you kind of have a positive outlook, optimistic, or a more balanced outlook, where you're not constantly judging yourself and your thoughts are a little bit less neurotic, then whatever, it doesn't matter. But it seems that a lot of people suffer because of that identification. So they make a big deal out of it sometimes, because it can seem to help with disidentifying with the thoughts. At least that was my experience. And then also it kind of sounded like she was in marketing or advertisement, which to me is kind of funny, because I think that's probably like one of the only professions where this message might be a hindrance because, I mean, as somebody who's in marketing, like, isn't the whole point to like create the sense of lack in other people so that they want to buy your product, so that they like, so that they like seek that sort of, you know, that sort of coming back or wholeness. I mean, isn't that what advertisement really is? It's like selling somebody on this isn't it. So I don't know. That was just my thoughts. So
That's really, that's clever. That's a clever insight there. Because I get that feeling. I get that feeling when I see adverts, and often when I listen to the radio as well. It sucks you in with with like, you're not good enough, but this will help you be good enough. So there's a lot of that goes on. That's something really great. I would love to know how to help people that are trapped in a cycle of that kind of thinking, where they kind of question their own thoughts continuously because of what's been going on, like what they're led to believe. So I'd love to learn how to help somebody center themselves back to themselves without having to and finding a purpose to move forward with, rather than feeling that they're kind of that they can't trust their thoughts and stuff, because it's true.
From my experience, the situation just has to be so hopeless, so obviously hopeless, that it just dissolves. The desire just ends because it's so hopeless. It doesn't. That's just from my experience. It doesn't happen.
What about the people that would say, then what am I left with? You know, what do I have if I don't have that? What would you say to that? Because there's a lot of people out there that are kind of.
What I would say to that is nobody surrenders. It just happens. Nobody, an ego won't do it intentionally. It just happens when it happens. It doesn't, like, an ego will never be like, and this is all theory, this is all just stories, but like, it is that, I don't know, that in order for there to be a surrender, the ego has to be gone. The person, it has to be completely given up. You know what I mean? So as long as there's somebody there's somebody who wants to give up, or somebody who's looking for a way to give up, it's not gonna work, I don't think. But that's just all theory. That's just.
No, that's good. It's good. It's good theory.
But by the way, on the marketing side, we're all selling something. Like, even non-duality speakers, we're all selling something. Like, it's innocent in a way, like, and it doesn't get in the way of this. So
Thank you for your honesty, Don. No, you're right. You're right. I know.
Well, the thing is, I think that we have certain problems and we often want to solve those problems. And so, for example, I do the kind of things that I market are things that people use in a workplace, like a software solution. You know, you're struggling to organize all this information in your library. You need a proper software that can help you organize that. So, or if you have a health problem, I mean, that's not to do with marketing, but we need to solve certain problems. And I guess it goes back to what we were saying earlier about, you know, your life still goes on, even if you can recognize that there is no one really here, or that there's no one that this experience is happening to. We know we still need to, I guess, retain our common sense and still want to solve our problems. And actually, that leads me to a question, if I'm all right to quickly jump in. Like, this idea of like liking things and disliking certain things. Like, you know, from a non-dual perspective, we know that it kind of just arises from the same space, you know, the feeling of liking and the feeling of disliking. But often that dislike can feel like it's really you, like, oh, I can't stand this song, this person, whatever, this experience. So what do you guys think about how you kind of reconcile that dislike with non-duality? Do you see it as just an experience that is arising, or can it be taken seriously, if that makes sense?
Dislike.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think when you say from a non-duality perspective, it's kind of interesting, but it's just seeing there's no one here to dislike anything. So they're not my dislikes. So it's seen that way. It's just seen disliking, whatever. I prefer strawberry over vanilla. But that's not my preference. How did I come up with that? Where did that start, that preference? What makes it mine? Did I decide to prefer one flavor or another? I don't know. It's just, that's the way I see likes and dislikes.
Mm.
And it's healthy to have those as well, because there's a lot of people suffer from the fact they don't even know what they like or dislike. That's part of being strong as individual self or non-dual, whatever. It's a better place to be in. Know what you like and what you dislike. It's good.
We also have Micah has his hand raised.
Yeah, I was wondering that did you say that people who have come to this realization that they have quite often have had some kind of trauma that has triggered the seeking, and like after seeking there have been some kind of awakening or liberation, but that there was some kind of research that not always but quite often.
Well, there's a little bit of research that Steve Taylor did in his PhD on, like a lot of suffering before awakening he found in the studies he did, which kind of makes sense in a personal way, if you know what I mean. That in the story, that sort of surrender, obviously nobody's doing that, but it kind of makes an intuitive kind of sense. And also at the end of life, there seems to be a letting go in many cases, with people just start to accept the moment, or maybe in where they're dying slowly of some terminal disease or whatever. Like there seems to be that. But I mean, to cause the seeking in the first place, I mean, yeah, dissatisfaction, lack of power, or just coming across it and resonating. There's a mystery on that, like why people do, or but definitely I think. But then there's a lot of people who suffer like crazy and they don't, so it's not that clear. And the statistics out there, I don't think there's a lot of research. I don't know, maybe I'm missing that, but I haven't come across stuff. So yeah, you can suffer a bit more.
And there's and there's a little bit danger that if you hear that you misinterpret that, think that okay, now I'm suffering, and
yes,
yeah.
but there's like how many times in one life, no matter, like nobody gets away with it. Like you're gonna lose somebody you love, you're gonna go through a crisis. Life is traumatic, man. Like there's no getting away from that. You might be lucky, you might not,
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Has Walter anything to say about that?
About trauma
Or
preceding awakening.
Yeah.
I used to hear, that pain was the touchstone of spiritual growth. I'm not sure, if I look at my own story, it seems to be that that's what was driving me. A feeling of incompleteness or a feeling of lack. But I don't know, trauma in particular, if there was like some specific incidents or anything like that, but just in general, feeling like a round peg in a square hole, like not fitting in and all that, drove me to try to, well, in a lot of ways, I wanted to just get rid of the self. I knew that, yeah, daily living comes from daily dying, and it's by losing the self that one finds. And I heard all these things, so I wanted to get rid of the self. I just didn't know how to do that, so I was seeking. But then I saw that self never was, which is the joke, the cosmic joke. But yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but I can't think of any trauma that drove me necessarily, but it was this just kind of underlying feeling of incompleteness.
Yeah, it's nice just talk around these things, that this is also allowed, because sometimes you get feeling that you get just negation in like radical non-duality circles, that everything is just negated, and that is sometimes also tiring, that it's just nice to talk around also. So you answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Aline has her hand raised.
Hi, Walter. Hi, Dawn.
Hello.
I have a question for Dawn. Okay, and it's about the Kundalini awakening. So, have you any tips for exiting the void stage of timelessness and being there and reintegrating back into life as it is?
Oh, it sounds like you're talking about non-duality. Like, why do you say Kundalini awakening? What's been going on for you?
And that was my experience of the non-duality this year, a couple of months ago. So,
oh, right, okay. So is there kind of like, you say integrating into life? Like, was there, so there wasn't the seeing of love then? It was just the emptiness? Is that what you're saying, or?
So in my experience, it was clearing and purifying everything, all the wounds and all the traumas that remained that came up. Right. And then I opened up to the unconditional love.
Okay, all right, okay. But
being completely in the present moment now, and
awesome.
As you're saying, creating from that, and having goals and desires, yet at the same time being okay with where I am because I'm in flow and loving it. And it just is as it is.
So is there a part of you kind of wanting to stay with the kind of, is there a kind of conflict between kind of integrating back into life and just staying in the kind of, in the presence kind of, is it like that or not, or?
It's hard to put into words. It's almost like creating from here, mm-hmm. while also having future desires, but knowing that the choices and actions I take from now are already leading to that. Okay. All right. But there's a reluctance around that, or there's just a wanting to get into that, or because you say integrating? Because sometimes people get a bit conflicted, as in it seems almost like a choice. Well, I can stay and I can be kind of blissed out and really just be where I am, or I can do this project, or I can, So for example, when you're creating projects and you're creating them from the now moment, do you have the vision of an end goal in mind?
Oh, definitely.
And working back from that? There
is that, but I mean, more of the energy is in the present than there would have been, say, prior to awakening. So it feels more organic. You're still rooted in the present, but yeah, you have to project ahead. You're seeing where it's going. You're thinking, yeah, well, maybe this will lead to something. Yeah, there's all the normal stuff as well. And it's kind of okay, but there's just, I think it's just healthier in that sense. You're not so dependent on the outcome of it as much as you might want that. It's so you tend to go towards things, I think, that are more suited to your character than you may have done before, because it's easier to stay in the flow that way. But it sounds like you're in a beautiful place, and you know.
It is, it's amazing. And what you said, I can't see. I'm a sensor and a feeler. I don't see. So for me, seeing something ahead, it's not there.
Okay.
Might come.
Okay, right. Okay.
You know what I mean?
You're gonna be good at doing.
So it's like there's this conflict of, I don't have an attachment to the outcome. I'm completely fine with the journey and whatever unfolds.
Right.
There seems to be this, this comes around trust.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if that's trust in the process or trust with myself, that where I'm going or the next action that I'm taking is aligned with where I'm going.
Oh,
But at the same time, if it's intuitive, maybe that's it. It's the trust and the intuition that's coming through.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really good. That's really helpful. And not everybody has that. I mean, awakening can't guarantee, that, in touch with the intuition in a deep way either. So it sounds like you've got everything you need and are probably going in the right direction. Yeah, you've got your own.
It feels directionless, actually. That's what it feels like. And
okay,
that's weird. It feels weird at the same time.
Okay.
Even though that's the conflict, actually. That's it. The being okay with lack of direction, but also feeling slight discomfort with directionless.
Okay. And it's not easy to resolve that either, but it'll probably you'll probably keep moving, won't you? Because, when there is a desire there, you'll just probably follow that. It sounds like you've something you're engaged in,
There's constant, there's so much coming through as well that I don't know what to pick to begin with.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, well, awesome. I mean, but it's just difficult. It's all new for you, isn't it? This experience. Yeah. I mean, and I
how
think
do you manage that? Do you have the same experience where you just get flooded with these ideas, and how do you choose?
Well, I'm not. I think I'm not. That's not going on here. Like I have one or two things that I am actually following, so I'm not. That sounds more painful actually, because choosing, it's difficult. You've got to go with something, don't you? But it works its way out, doesn't it? But it's painful because there's no knowing, is there? But you've got your intuition, so it's your inner guidance, don't you? So.
I guess I'm being guided. I am being guided from multiple sources, and
awesome.
It's probably just trusting myself, a self.
Yeah, no, that sounds pretty damn good. It's just interesting you mentioned Kundalini, because it's more, the non-dual. I don't see where the Kundalini comes into that really, but
perhaps it was non-dual. Now the more when I listened to you at the beginning, I resonate with that.
Non-dual. Maybe you'll get Kundalini tonight. Who knows? Maybe. Anyway.
Okay. There's also this, I'm going to say, like, forgetting, remembering cycle. And I'm not sure what I'm forgetting and remembering, or in and out of something.
Right.
You know what I'm referring to when I say that?
Not sure. Yeah. Oh, the self, you mean, or?
Possibly with the mind, like the mind projecting outwards objects and come in and out, yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, yes. I've had that as well. And then when everything goes, it just goes, doesn't it? So you're not connecting with the goals or anything then, are you? It's just, you're just sat where you're sat. That can be difficult too, because it all goes away. It can, I mean, particularly initially it can. No.
And obviously it's more pronounced out in nature.
Yeah.
Where everything is just like I'm walking in a simulation, fine. And when I come back to like that, sitting down to begin something, the mind will go and the motivation's gone.
Yeah. Okay.
The energy for the action is gone. And it's this awareness in the present moment just takes over.
Right.
And it's a bit frustrating, to be honest.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. It can all fall away in that when I find that as well. Actually, I was out walking the other day and I was gonna do some writing and I was so drunken with the bliss, and it was just like the idea of sitting at a desk tapping away just seemed no way. Just incapable. Yeah, it can be annoying.
And then I'm wondering how will I produce or finish something when it's a constant go from here, there, everywhere, and the different states.
It will come, you know, it will come. I mean, this sounds recent for you as well, and you'll find it easier, I think, as time goes on. Because when did this all occur then?
May.
Okay,
6
so
months
it's
ago.
fresh. May, it's still fresh, and it's, you know, maybe for the next year, I don't know how long it'll take, but it'll start to be more constant. You can get into what you're doing, and because even bliss states or empty mind, it doesn't get in the way with what you're doing most of the time. Sometimes it can, but it won't. You know, it's still early days, and you're probably still really enjoying just hanging out in emptiness and nature and the wow of that. Like it's because it you know, and it's to be enjoyed.
Connecting with
Isn't it?
everything. Just connecting with spirit of everything, and feeling really connected. It's the interdependence, I think, is experiencing that, and
Right.
it's love, pure love for everything and everyone, and
Wow.
just acceptance. It brings great peace.
That's awesome.
So yeah, thank you. I'll just sit with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Myra has her hand raised.
Yeah, hi again. So before we were talking about like, you know, useful thoughts and that kind of thing, and our relationship to different thoughts. So one time I asked this like Zen teacher about like a similar question to what I was saying with creativity. And she said she kind of distinguishes thoughts into two kind of regions, where like one is your natural intelligence, and that's kind of your common sense, and that comes from like a very pure state. And then so there's natural intelligence, and the other one is like the result of your conditioning. So you're getting thoughts based on what you picked up in the media and whatever school. So natural intelligence, and then like your conditioned thoughts. And then, you know, let's say those situations that we've all been in where you're kind of stuck making a decision, maybe between two options or whatever, your mind keeps going back and forth. And that's the way to deal with that, supposedly, is to recognize what is arising from your own natural intelligence. You know, when you just sit back and then you get into that space, and then the solution comes through that intelligent self rather than just the conditioned self. Have you guys ever come across anything like this? Because it's really interesting to me. I don't know what your thoughts are on kind of common sense and then like your own conditioned thoughts. Any thoughts on that?
Do you have any thoughts on that, Dawn?
Well, I find that quite funny, quite confusing in a way. Like, so, I mean, yeah, I mean, how the hell would you tell that? I mean, like, there's something about when thoughts come from fear, you know, when you're making a decision and it's fear-based, it's not great, is it? You know, there may not be anything you can do about that, but it's good to be cognizant of it. I mean, but to kind of break down thoughts in terms of, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, but maybe I'm not understanding it, I don't know, but it sounds quite complicated. But it's good, we make better decisions when we're not making them out of fear, for sure, because obviously the cortisol is kicking off, we're in an arousal state, we're just looking, you know, you know, maybe survival over kind of what we want. It can obscure things, but you know, you can get too much into this and then you're going to create a secondary problem of not being able to kind of do anything, you know. But yeah, so it's not I don't know the distinction, but I don't know if I get it entirely, but I don't know enough about it. So anyway.
Yeah, I can't see a separate place where thoughts might come from.
Yeah, but do you not think that there is kind of a difference between, like, say, when you're following your common sense and then you just say following the crowd based on what you picked up? Do you not think there can be a difference between thoughts that feel more like kind of like bullshit, it's like a little bit fake, it's kind of groupthink, and then thoughts that seem like, yeah, this is just a smart choice, really?
Well, the mind is conditioned, it's all conditioning, and some of it's good, you know. You go beyond the thoughts into the emotions if you want to get closer to the kind of truth of what, you know, what you feel. Like the thoughts should spring from that, like get in touch with that. That's your intuition, is to go deeper, like, you know, your deeper inner knowing, because the gut is like a second brain anyway, you know. So, you know, get in touch with what you feel first and what you think from that for me, that would make more sense than, I mean, it's just the mind is conditioned. All thought is, you know, conditioned. We have creative thought as well, obviously, coming from that, but it's not bad because it is necessarily. Anyway.
Do you ever feel like gut feelings can be wrong though? Like sometimes you think, oh no, this is off, and then you can actually turn out to be wrong, you know, when you give something a chance and then it actually works out and you weren't expecting it.
Is that
Do you feel
your
like intuition can
experience?
be off? Yeah, sometimes I'm surprised, like I expect something to go one way and I feel that it's gonna, and then I'm constantly surprised. Yeah.
Well, maybe. I mean, I know Gabor Mate is like, you can never be wrong when you go with your gut instincts, but of course, yes, anything. Of course, we could misinterpret that as well, but it's just good to know, like, and to increase your vocabulary around what you feel. So at least you can articulate that. Then you've kind of got a better idea of what reality looks like. You know, what's what. Like if you feel fear around somebody, what are you picking up on? If you feel shame around somebody, what's that telling you? Do you know, like the emotions are the root of information about your environment, really. So that's your intelligence, you know, your emotional intelligence that will guide you much more than going straight to thought, you know, just checking in with yourself. And, you know, but yeah, of course, anything we can misinterpret, but generally speaking, I think you can trust that a lot more. And most people, I mean, that seems to be the evidence, seems to be supporting that. Like, but yeah, no. You're not convinced, but you know, maybe you're...
Yeah, I was just curious when you said stuff like when you're around someone and you feel shame or you feel fear or whatever. So in that situation, what's your I guess, what's your recommended protocol? Is it about going in there and exploring what's going on within you, or is it about like putting the blame on the person for making
Not
you feel that
necessarily,
way?
but it's just like if you don't normally feel shame around someone and then suddenly you do in a certain situation, there may be something there, you know. It's just, well, what is that bringing up? Is that mine? And, you know, just to look at what am I thinking and what, you know, what's that make me think? And it can guide you in relationships as well, you know, like if something's toxic or, you know, if you're feeling, you know, it can help you navigate that. It might be something to do with you, it might be something to do with them, but it can be a warning as well. It could be a red flag for something if you don't ordinarily feel that, you know, because it isn't like, oh, see how you are around most people, just connecting in with the body and how the body feels. And
But then how do you distinguish whether it's just you and your mind creating something or whether it's like genuinely that person is just off?
it's the emotion, well, you're not creating that, are you? I mean, thoughts are all over the place, right? They're constantly contradicting. There's doubt, the mind doubts, right? The mind doubts and it goes from one thing to another. This is good, this is not good. The emotions are much more root kind of like information about what's actually the case, what you're actually feeling, and that's it's kind of real, you know. It's the emotions never lie, that's the saying goes. So it's starting there and increasing your emotional intelligence and being able to see the subtlety of the different emotions you're feeling. That's what will guide you through life, like more than anything else. I mean, and your inner knowing. So just because a lot of people don't even know what they're feeling half the time, you know, and then they get themselves in all sorts of trouble. So, so
What does your money? Yeah, we're in Gemma. Yeah, I know, I'm on with it.
Dawn, could I pop in again and ask you a question about emotions versus feelings? Could you describe the difference for me from your perspective?
well, emotion. So if you're working with emotion, emotion is expressing, is about expressing something. So you know, you emote, it's moving it through the body, it's finding an expression. Like if you're angry, you will articulate that to someone, not necessarily not act it out. But if you're working with feelings, is the passive way of acting with, you know, emotions in the body. It's like metabolizing it. So just sitting with a feeling, whether it's anger or sadness, just sitting with that can kind of metabolize it, and it can work its way through. But if you're, the other way is to emote, which is to somehow, you know, not to the person. If you're angry, it doesn't mean getting angry with the person, but somehow expressing that to a friend, to a therapist, whatever. That's another way of metabolizing it as well. And the two seems to be important to have both. But meditation is very much in favor of just sitting with the feeling and, you know, letting it kind of pass through. So it's a kind of nice way of working with things as well. But you can do both with whatever you're feeling, because it kind of brings more equilibrium into the body. The hemispheres, the left and right hemisphere of the brain, tend to work together, so you can think and feel at the same time, and that's as healthy as we can kind of get when we're actually talking and feeling. You know, that's a good place to be. And awakening doesn't guarantee that. Like, you could be completely cut off, like so.
Yeah, because I was finding at the beginning, the emotions wanted to be expressed through the body, through tears, and using that as a cleansing mechanism and a tool. And then going to the meditation aspect and sitting with whatever's coming up, kind of like the metaphor of holding the wheel of the ship and allowing the waves to settle down, which they do.
Oh, nice.
And wondering if there's like a correct way or incorrect way, but because for emotions, for me, it's energy in motion.
Yeah.
That for a long time I had this idea that they needed to be processed and moved through the body, whether crying, singing, dancing, any type of movement to get it out.
Yeah.
But also then realizing it's okay to just sit and be with whatever's coming up.
Yeah. Or just, sit, express, or just talk as well. I mean, talking is bloody good if you can bring the emotion into that. I mean, it really is as well, having a confidant or someone you can chat with. But I think initially they can be very big, can't they? A lot of tears after awakening, and tears of happiness, joy, and, you know, whatever's coming up.
Everything, dark night, the whole lot.
Oh yeah, no, it's a lot of
okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
cheers.
Anybody else in the Zoom? You have a few questions in the YouTube chat. let's see. Kind of a generic one about Kundalini. Did you guys have a Kundalini? I didn't. I don't know what you can say about that, Don.
Did you have a Kundalini?
It just says, did you guys have a Kundalini? Yeah.
Well, I don't have a Kundalini. Whatever the fuck it sounds like. I don't know. Are you going to eat or something? But yeah, I've had a Kundalini awakening. I've had 2 Kundalini awakenings, and they're very interesting. And in terms of what this is, but it's not the same as non-duality, which, you know, falling away the personal self. But it does make reality more interesting in terms of what is this, and it can also lead to more integration in terms of psychological material, and I find it fascinating. Kundalini is an interesting process, so yeah.
And we have another one about Ramana Maharshi's self-inquiry. Who am I? They want to know, is this approach necessary? I'd say nothing is necessary, but certainly you could give it a try. I didn't personally do it, but I can see, even in the course of this conversation, I can see how self-inquiry comes up. Like when Myra was speaking about thoughts, I think about, yeah, who's having the thought? There's a thought, and then there's another thought, and then there's a third thought that thinks, which of these 2 thoughts is the higher thought, is the better thought, is, you know, which one of these thoughts is going with my higher consciousness or intuition or being true to myself. And they're all arising from the same place, seemingly. And it's just amazing. And this is like self-inquiry, just investigating, looking into, you know, where is this thought coming from? Who is the thinker? I don't know if you have any thoughts on self-inquiry, Don.
I just remember doing it and finding it incredibly confusing and pretending I knew what I was being asked to do. I remember sort of like, oh yes, I know what they're talking about, and actually not knowing that I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. So it was kind of 2-layered confusion, which I was so used to, I suppose because of narcissistic abuse, I was so used to being confused, it felt very comfortable. So I don't know, it wasn't for me. If it works for you, it works for some people. They really like that and they get something out of it. So yeah, go with whatever you're attracted to, explore that. Fantastic, you know.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know if it was a practice, but I would sit there and I'd be like, I'm not my body, I'm not my mind, and just see, you know, what arises. Like, what is that? It was clear even back then that none of this was mine, being generated by me. Thoughts obviously just come out of nowhere. Words just seem to all come from this one no thing. We have a question here. It says, how can something that doesn't exist give up? I don't know. Do we talk about something that doesn't exist giving up?
I think it's the ego.
Oh, is it the self giving up? Maybe. Can you speak to that? How does something that doesn't exist give up?
Well, there's nothing given up, and the ego exists anyway. I mean, all this exists and doesn't exist at the same time. So it's everything and nothing. And you know, it's not like you don't have a personality or an I afterwards. Nobody is that. In a sense, that's not who you are, but that goes on. So you've still got an ego. So the ego doesn't drop away or give up or do anything. Like, this is seen or it's not seen. It's not to do, you know, it happens in spite of that. And so I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. You don't try to get rid of your ego. Good luck with that one. And you probably need it, but to navigate life, etc., etc. Not that anybody's doing that. So I don't know, does that speak to that? I don't know.
All right, we have another one. Says Tim Cliss often says, "This is it." He also says, "If you are not aware of something, it doesn't really exist." Really? Does he say that? I don't know. Do you agree with this? If you are not aware of what is outside your house right now, can you say it exists?
Okay, the obsession with that one, how would you know? And anyway, we're creating what we see, you know. So yeah, like, you know, I take it for granted that, you know, outside the window exists in a real sense. You can't know. There's a lot of things we just can't know. So in a way, so who knows whether ultimately it does or does not exist, but you know.
That's a good one, though. Does the moon exist when we're not looking at it?
Well, we're creating the moon, don't we, when we look at it? So in a way it's not there when we're not looking at it, but who knows?
All right. Next one, Tim Cliss. Oh, more Tim Cliss. Also emphasize you can't get this right or wrong. There's no wrong way or right way. It just is. Yeah, I would concur with Tim Cliss on that. Any thoughts on getting it right or wrong?
Getting it right or wrong, I don't really understand that. I mean, the question seems a bit getting it right or wrong. I'm not really sure what they're referring to there. I mean, what getting the awakening right or wrong, is this it or not? I guess.
Doesn't seem like a question, really. Just says Tim Cliss emphasized.
Well, it's Tim Cliss, it must be right.
Is this Tim Cliss?
For Tim.
Is he in the chat? No, yeah, well, I mean, it says he emphasized you can't get it right or wrong. So there's no right or wrong answer.
Sounds right to me. Sounds right to me. It's got to be right.
Saying it can't be right or wrong sounds right to me.
Yeah, I'll do.
All right, any other questions from the chat or the Zoom room? Jump right in. Don't even raise your hand. Just, we only got a few minutes left till 1:30.
I got another question. It's on compassion. So how do you, because we often hear that is like a praised virtue. How do you feel compassion for another person while still recognizing, there is really no person there or no person here who's being compassionate towards them?
Well, the two aren't mutually exclusive. The compassion arises spontaneously and naturally. So, not saying two separate people does not eliminate that possibility for the compassion to arise. Even more so, I mean, it even more so allows for the compassion.
Yeah. When the self-obsession falls away, I suppose to a certain extent, there's probably more space for that, and awakening or non-dual seeing is associated with more compassion. That certainly seems to be the case, although I do wonder about that. to wonder about that. And compassion is a very easy thing to talk about. Compassion is about doing something. It's not just about empathy. It's about actually doing an action. It's not a passive thing. And sometimes it's easier to have compassion for something abstract, like people having problems elsewhere, than to have empathy for your nearest and dearest, or that's very telling. People who care about the people around them versus people who care about people they don't even know, like, because there's a lot of toxic people can care about people they don't know. I'm not saying it's mutually exclusive, obviously it can be both, whatever, but it's just an interesting one in itself, you know. I do wonder about compassion, though. I think there is empirical sort of the investigation, like even Steve Taylor's done, seems to suggest that there's more compassion there after awakening, and also there's more room for the other when the self isn't there, I suppose, in an obvious way. But yeah, there is, but I'm sure not all the time, and you know, very skeptical, I think.
And do you, when it comes to how you feel compassion, I've heard some people say it's not about feeling like you're also in the misery with that person. Like, let's say that person is going through a very horrible situation. Like, you're not also wading in the misery when you're thinking about all their suffering, but you are like empathizing with them and hoping that they can feel freedom from that suffering and happiness and joy and all of that. On the other hand, I have heard some people say, oh, real compassion is just being like, just bawling your eyes out, knowing what that person is going through. So how do you kind of like distinguish compassion and like sympathy and empathy and all of that?
Well, empathy in the normal sense is, I mean, it is feeling along with someone else. And so in my own case, sometimes I'll be sitting with somebody and it seems like I can feel their sadness, and and that's there. Also the peace is there, or, you know, or the joy or whatever. But you know, or some people have more kind of just the intellectual, you know, they can put themselves in someone else's you know, position or whatever, and kind of work in that way. But it's not an either or. Sometimes I can be in a state of bliss and just be with someone who's sad and not feel it. You know, there's not one way it emerges for me, but so empathy is feeling. It can be feeling alongside. I mean, an empath feels the feelings of someone else, but it doesn't necessarily. Empathy can just be appreciating where they're coming from and feeling with them, not necessarily feeling the emotion. You know, it can just be sort of sympathizing at a distance, or I don't know. There's just, we all have access to that, you know, like, and some people are just really emotionally open. I don't know about bawling your eyes out all the time. That sounds pretty emotionally dysregulated, but quite a painful place to be if you're really that moved, you know, because some people feel emotions of others so much that they can't go into a lot of environments and stuff, and that could be bad as well. So I don't know. I don't know if that answered it.
So do you feel like compassion is kind of this individually processed emotion? Then so for some people it will feel a certain way, for others it will be different. Is that what you're getting at?
Compassion is feeling moved to do something about the situation someone's, you know, in, or it's kind of active, isn't it? Someone's in trouble and you offer to help, you know, rather than just sit and, like some people do when they're watching the news or something, they just sit and go, you know, it's not awful. It's actually being moved to do something about it, and you know, so it's more engaged. And there is more of that for sure, but some people are just naturally like that, aren't they?
Okay, so you don't just see it as like an emotion, it's also just following through with that emotion and doing what you can.
Yeah, it is. It's engaged. It's a doing. It's not just a feeling, it's a doing as well. It's being moved to help and make a change, you know, even if it's just by speaking, or it might be an act of helping and maybe going somewhere to help, you know, people or whomever it is. But it's not just having a conversation behind the scenes going, oh, isn't that awful? Do you know, it costs something. It's, you know.
Interesting. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. We had a few more questions, but I don't think we'll be able to squeeze them in. But thank you, everybody, for coming. We'll do this again. And next Monday, Dawn and I will be having a conversation with Tim Freak. So look forward to checking that out. Subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell, and you'll see that coming up soon. And all the other content on this channel. Anything you'd like to say, Dawn, before we close?
No, not really. No, yeah, just thanks everybody for coming along. I enjoyed it very much and hope to see you at the next one.
Yeah, we're doing this second Monday of every month. Is that right?
Yeah, second Monday.
All right. So we'll check out Dawn and my channel for updates and notifications about these meetings. But yeah, second Monday of every month. We'll see you then. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you all. See you the next time.